Hello and welcome to a very good social media podcast where we try and live up to that name every single day. I'm Zach Elia. Let's get into it. So today's guest, Angela Denogean, she is the senior social media manager for the Carolina Panthers. Someone that I have known for quite some time. We crossed paths back when I was with the Cardinals, and I believe she worked with the NFL at that time. But someone who I've always bounced ideas off of, asked for advice, and obviously with the Panthers, and everyone kind of knows my love of their content and that team there. But like just being able to follow along with her work and the projects and the campaigns and the things that they do that just lead the way in so many cases within sports. So it's great to get some chance to talk to her and really sit down and talk about her journey and how she got to where she is and the learning process that went along with it. And then even just, some of her favorite projects and advice for the next generation and those who are trying to get in the industry. So an amazing chat. Can't wait for you guys to watch it. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome Angela to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always great to connect. And I mean, we were just talking about it, but like the Panthers have always been, a team that even from like the first day I got into the NFL and I was like, what do I do here? It's always been like somehow the Panthers. And so that like the progression of your team and the ones that did it before you and how you've kind of continued to build even more so on that of like the amazing stuff that you guys do every day is always it's always fun to follow along.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I think, like you said, it's really important to mention the people before me because they kind of built that foundation and we've been able to grow from it. But I've learned a ton since being in the NFL. So it's been a good time.
I can imagine. Well, I mean, so let's kick this off kind of how I do every time is like the floor is yours. Just tell me, how you got to where you are today and kind of open up about your journey and basically what your role is now with the Panthers and how it basically all came about.
Yeah, so I always love this question because when I was in college, I didn't know this was a job. I didn't know you can do social media as a job. And so now I feel like it's so much more out there. And sorry if you're hearing Slack notifications because we're always on. Um, but I went to Arizona State and I wanted to originally be, like a sideline reporter, be on camera. And then probably my junior year was like, this isn't really for me. This pathway isn't really what I really want to do. I can't really see myself doing that. And so I kind of dabbled in videography and more behind the scenes content creation. And I landed an internship with the Arizona Diamondbacks doing social media. And at first I was like, okay, like I don't really know what this is. And at the time, social media wasn't as big as it is now, like, which makes me feel old even saying that. But social was here, social was kind of growing, like Snapchat was like a really big thing there. It was still up and coming. So everyone was trying to figure out like, what is this platform? What do we do? What do people like to see on there? So I kind of just went in like very open of being like, well, how can I help? Where do I learn? This is just like cool opportunity. What can I be doing? And so during that time, I was also taking a sports photography class. And so I would take my camera with me everywhere and I would just start shooting photos as I was like working or out and about getting stuff for Snapchat. So I really learned a lot there. And I think one of the biggest things that kind of like hooked me was social media is a little bit of everything. So that journalistic side and finding stories was really what I wanted to do on camera, but I was able to do that doing social media and figuring out who your players are, figuring out, if you have a fan out there that has a crazy story, maybe they flew from Germany or whatever to come out to a game, you can still tell that story without being on camera and without being a reporter. So that's something that I learned really, really quickly, and I love that. So the internship ended, and at the time there wasn't any full-time roles. And so I was kind of like, okay, I'm graduating soon. Like, shoot, what do I do? And MLB had at the time, I think it was pretty new, started a live content creator program. And so basically the NFL has it now as well. And you're stationed at the home stadium that you're there and you'll create content, whether it's phone. Now it's become a huge thing where it's like video content, photos, social, but at the time it was really just phone content. And I would take photos here and there. And so it would be capturing content for the away teams and then sending them to use on social. So kind of did that for maybe like 2 years while doing some random side stuff just to kind of pay the bills. And more for transparency, I tell people all the time, paths are not direct. Like I was working for a medical company doing social media, was very bored, wasn't about it, but I was like, this is kind of how I'm going to get by for now. And then the Alliance of American Football came along, and I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but it's very similar to the XFL. And it was really cool because it gave a lot of players another chance to kind of take a stab at their dreams and be able to become football players and do that for a living. And so unfortunately it folded within 6 months. But from there, I always say that was my first like big girl job. It was full time. I was kind of running things on social, and we were able to see the accounts grow. I think when I got them, it was maybe like Instagram was like 1,000 followers, and we ended with 50. So it was crazy to see that growth. And from there, um, the league ended, and I was kind of, what do I do now? So I went back to some part-time stuff here and there, and the opening with the Panthers came along, and it just happened that Amy, who was my manager and was really the only social person at the time, they were playing the Cardinals. So they came down and I met them as a LCC. And then we kind of hit it off, and I flew into Carolina to do an interview. And since there, that's kind of how it started. So that's my journey in a crazy whirlwind, but definitely wasn't a straight path.
No, for sure. It's always cool to hear just because like everyone's journey is I don't know that there's been anyone that I've talked to, even like just in my career that has been like, "Oh yeah, I knew from day one like this is what I wanted to do. I took the 5 steps I needed to get there." It's always like, you're working for like you said a medical company. Like I worked in NASCAR for a little bit. Like it's interesting to see how it progresses because like granted, I started back in, I think it was 2013. I graduated college in 2011, and it was like, I had no classes for social media. Like there was no way that this was a career, but now it's looking back, it's like, I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this.
Exactly. It's so much fun. And I think the biggest thing is the day to day is different. Like I was joking with my family the other day at a week off, and I was like, man, I don't have anything planned till maybe the end of the week. I'm just hanging out. What do I do? And so it's like weird to kind of have a peaceful thing, which probably isn't healthy. But I'm kind of like, that is what excites you about it, is something's different every day. And so it's fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's funny, like I remember you and I crossed paths back when you were an LCC in Arizona. And I remember that whole process of I think Amy hit me up and was like, Angela applied. Like, what do you think of her? I was like, oh my goodness, like please don't steal her away. But also like, yes, she's perfect. And so
Thank
yeah, but I mean, like you and I have had conversations quite a few times of me trying to steal you back and get you somewhere. But no, it's cool. Like, you talking about the AAF and I'm sure people still remember exactly what that was, but that was like such a new, interesting thing. And the fact that it only lasted for a short period of time sucks. But like at the same time, like you could probably look back at those 6 months and say, like, look at all that I learned, look at all that I got to experience in kind of your journey.
Yeah, and that was something that it was perfect timing, and that was that perfect next step because there really wasn't rules. It was just kind of like go ahead, do it. It was myself and one other person, Casey, and her and I were literally doing everything. She was writing stories, I was taking photos, she was helping with video, and then we'd post everything. And so we'd split up game day, but we were never in the press box. Both of us were on the field. It's like, how, I don't even know how that would even happen now, but we just kind of did it as we went along. And so that was something that was like a huge learning experience, just working with players and getting to know, like, the ways to just go about certain things and figuring out how to schedule. And um just those big projects, I think, was one of the biggest things that was super helpful in that situation.
For sure. Well, and like I will always credit my role in NASCAR with me having an ability to make something out of nothing. Like so basically like I worked there for 2 years where it was the NASCAR track, like not even a team, anything like that. It was like you are this piece of land that has 2 races a year. So how do you make the rest of the year interesting? And that was like I still to this day can think back to like, running around the track and thinking it like it really challenged me to think outside the box and it helps like later on in your career too.
That was one of my first times too. We were sponsored content was like this new thing, and it was some pizza company, and like, Valentine's coming up, we have heart-shaped pizza, and they're like, here, take heart-shaped pizzas to practice. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with these? Like, what do you want me to do? What is it supposed to look like? Where does it go? What am I supposed to ask of them? And thankfully the guys were just excited to eat pizza after practice, and it became a whole thing. Which usually kind of falls in our lap sometimes. Content just organically happens that way. But I was like, how am I supposed to do this? And what does the partner want? And how do they, what's going to make them happy? And so that one just kind of came together. But that was for sure my first time of being like, okay, so we're doing something for a company. What does that mean? But
Yeah,
now every day.
and it's so cool to see kind of how everything has grown because like again talking about NASCAR it's like we had I think there was a team of five of us and it was like basically we accounted for five different departments that an NFL team or an MLB team has now so it's like just to see how crazy it was where it was like even when I started with the Steelers in 2015 I was like I was making all the graphics I was covering all the community events like I was traveling with the team and it's like looking back in that like thank the Lord that I got that opportunity because it helped me so much and it helps you understand all the different processes. But at the same time, like sitting in my office now, it's like, how would I even do like how would I do all the stuff that our social teams do all by yourself?
Yeah, it's insane. I think that's kind of a point now where everyone's trying to find that balance, right? Like there's a lot on social, we see on Twitter of like a social manager is mostly strategy, but I feel like we kind of come from the same background, I think Q as well, of like we've created content, we understand what makes a good story understand those different things. And I think that is kind of what makes you so much better, right? Like now I can be like, oh, there's somebody who can do it way better than I can. Like I don't even want to touch that, right? Like our designers are crazy, our videographers, photographers, incredible. But I think that's so much more helpful when you can understand what good content is, how to get good content. And then obviously being like an avid viewer of everything, but I think being able to say like, I did it to a capacity. I understand what we're looking for and being able to relay that I think is really helpful.
Yeah. No, and I think like just like you said, it's consuming it is one thing, but
Mhm.
like being the one that does it also gives you that kind of understanding and also like a massive amount of respect for the people on your team who do that now because it's like I look at videos that I made back in the day or graphics I made and now it's like literally every producer in our building and every like graphic designer in our building is like 4 million times more talented than I was. And it's like, so it really makes you appreciate that side of things too.
Yeah, and it's fun too to be able to see people like coming up with the project or brainstorming and then seeing, them being able to take something that we brainstormed and created and be like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even expect this. Like this is insane. So being able to work in a team environment too and seeing that is probably one of my favorite things too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, so kind of digging into, the strategy side and very generic, like the Panthers, like I said earlier, always one of those teams where I'm like, you guys do something, and I'm like, man, like why it was perfect. Like, why didn't I think of that? And so, like, I talked a little bit with Scott Kegley, who's VP of Digital with the Falcons and all the other Atlanta teams, and so they've kind of also been in that world where like he was with the Vikings, now he's with the Falcons, but it's always like the hardest question that I always get presented is like what's next? And so how do you guys basically stay almost ahead of the curve rather than like looking at others for inspiration and kind of putting your take on something? Like what's the thought process and how do you get to that point where it's like, these ideas just come and they kind of work?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just being on social all the time, and I think like that can get draining and there's a point where it's like, okay, I do need to take a break. But I think it's seeing things and bringing it to the table and to the group. Like I'm very much like, hey, I saw this. Does this make sense? And now I have people on my team who are like way younger than me. I should say way, but they're younger than me. So I'm like, man, I might think this is funny. You guys may think this is extremely corny. So it's kind of just bringing stuff to the table and saying, hey guys, what if we did this? Or what do you think about this? And we'll kind of sit together and just say, I think it would work better if we bring in X, Y, and Z, or this player knows this about it or has these interests. So I think kind of staying in tune of what is kind of trending on social has been the biggest thing. And then also we all have our different interests. Like I'm very much, I love music. We have people who are more artsy or like see these different graphics, things like that. You can kind of pull into it or movies and bringing inspiration from there. I actually we were thinking of a draft concept at one point, and I was at a concert, and I was like, this would be crazy as a set, like a way smaller version, but how can we incorporate that? So I think it's really just pulling inspiration from everywhere, and then also looking outside of sports. Like I a lot of times will look at complex and complex sports for inspiration there too. They usually do a really good job, and then that's a lot of like what's happening with celebrities and kind of what they're in tune with. I think the hardest part is jumping on it in time so you're not too late, but also feeling out like, does this make sense? Right? Because there's sometimes that you can jump on something and it's like, that had no alignment with who we are as a team. It doesn't make sense. Now you're forcing it. And now people are like, look at the teams who are just jumping into it, you know? And so that's the hard thing. But sometimes if you have something that's like, this fits your voice, like, Amy did a great job of creating this like friend voice as our social team that I've tried to continue to build upon that of like we're not just a brand that's just throwing stuff to the wall. I think like you can respond to us. We are your friend, you know, like people will DM us about stuff that's happening in their family and we'll try to respond, you know, as much as we can. I think to create a space for them has been really helpful in a time to just be able to communicate back and forth. And as things go on, like again, you really have to match the tone and how things are going. So that's changed a little bit for us. But I think that's the goal, is to kind of be that friend for you in a space that you can kind of create, and you laugh when things are funny, and then we can kind of bond when as we're going through it. So I think that changes daily, but that's probably the best way I can explain it.
Well, and you bring up a good point because it's something that like we've talked about, and even the industry, like everyone talks about like the content and like it's all the output and what type of content can we put out there to make sure that people are excited and we're engaging. But like the listening side, I think is something that has lacked, especially with kind of brands where, I mean, you see, like a social team like Wendy's or Annie Ann's, where it's like, Lyft is another one where it's like they've perfected like the listening part. And
Yeah.
those are the things that you always hear about is like, oh, they saw this comment and put these influencers up at this, Airbnb or whatever it was, or, Lyft found, what was it, like a family that was named like the Ubers and made sure to hook them up with stuff. Like it's always that stuff where it's like, I think gets taken for granted because one, like no one really had time to do the listening, early on. And I think like, that's probably a side, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit too, like you're building stock with your fans, you're making the account more than just like something that people yell at when things go wrong. So it's like I think the listening side is definitely a cool side.
And it's tough too, right? Like when you said things kind of aren't going your way. I mean, this was a tough season, but we had a fan who had a haircut, and he had Bryce Young in his haircut. And so it was like a full portrait, which was actually really, really cool. And it happened to be he was coming to the game. He was flying from, I don't remember where he was flying from, but he was out of town. He was coming to the game. And so we got him some sideline passes, had Bryce go out and meet him, got him a jersey. And so it's try to create those moments for people that like, hey, whether this does good or not, we just created this moment for this fan that he will probably never forget. And so that's just something that we try to do, of like just make moments happen for people. And if it works well, then great, but as organic as it can be, then that's kind of the goal there.
Yeah. And I mean, like like our job is basically to capture these moments and tell the stories, mostly on the field and some of the stuff that goes on. But like, that's the other side is like, how do you create moments yourself? Like if someone hits us up on Twitter and says, or X, sorry, like hits us up and is like,
I can't do it. I can't
I,
say, it's hard.
it's so hard. I was good about it for like a week and I keep swimming back and forth. But it's like some guy bought tickets, something happened, missed the game, couldn't be there, missed this big moment. And it's like the easiest thing to do is just ignore it and be like, oh, well, sorry, buddy, like maybe next year. But like just that listening and taking that thought of, and that mindset of like, let's create a moment. And it's like, bring the guy in, let him experience this, make this special thing for him, where it's like, that's basically our jobs, right? It's like, we're trying to make it cool to be a Pirates fan, cool to be a Panthers fan, like build these lifelong connections. And it's like, you can do that in a more humanizing way almost, where it's like you could bring these people out, you can reach out to these people instead of just pushing out content that everyone talks about.
Exactly. And I've always said too, like social is kind of that bridge between fans and their favorite player. Cause a lot of times they don't meet their favorite player ever. They may, tweet at them or on Instagram, something like that. And obviously that's more accessible now, but you may never meet that person who is an idol or who your family loved for so long, and that's why you're connected to them. And so us being able to kind of bridge that gap, I think is one of the biggest pieces of our job of being able to do that and to create those moments. So that's always something I try to think through too of like, this person may never get the opportunity to do this. Like, how can we help?
Yeah. And I mean, if you ask anyone who's working in sports, who is your favorite player on the team, it's never the guys that you think, it's never the guys that the fans are thinking,
Right.
right? It's always
Yeah.
like these really down to earth, really nice, really kind guys. And it's like, just like you said, that bridge is, how do we bring the fans into that world where it's like this guy could totally be your favorite player. Like, yeah, he doesn't get, 15 sacks a year, but he's funny, he's great, he loves this stuff. So it's like, just like you said, it's almost our job to be like, all right, well, how do we pull this out of that guy while also pulling people closer to him?
Yeah, I think that was one of probably the best compliments that I heard from a player this year. They're like, "You guys really brought me out of my shell. Like I didn't like cameras, I wasn't comfortable." And now this probably you would never think, like you would never think this person was shy at all. And so that's kind of one of the things of like all you have to do is kind of make them comfortable, right? Like they're humans too. People are always like, "Oh, well, they're a player. They make this amount of money. The least they can do is sign this or say this." And it's like, but these are humans too, and they may not be comfortable with their lives just out there. Like, yes, they know that their job has to be out there, but beyond that. And so I think kind of that's another piece of our job is to make them as comfortable as we can, and create a setting for them where they're open to trying new things, doing new things, and creating that trust. I think a lot of times I may be going kind of on a little tangent here, but a lot of times you go to these players, a lot of them like, oh, you're just coming to me when you need something. But I think the biggest thing for us in these jobs, especially is to be, how's your day? How are the kids? I saw you went on this vacation. It looked awesome. What was that like? And there's no ulterior motive, but it's just like you build those relationships and then you learn later down the line, like that helps out so much. You're not just another media member in there. You're not just kind of here to just get X, Y, and Z for them. You are here if they need help, if they're going through something, or anything you can kind of do there. But I think you become way more, and I think it helps you become better at your job that way as well.
Well, and it's about building that trust too, right? Like if you're someone keeps asking you to do something and you don't know who they are or what they're about, or if they're gonna like make you look good, make you look bad, just because it's like sadly, like there's too much in the media where it's like it's almost like gotcha, and we want to try and get you off your game. But like, so just like you said, building that trust of like you're making a safe place for this athlete to basically be himself, and it's like however you can do that is so key.
Yeah, and I've gone to players like, "Hey, you want to take a dance class with us? Hey, do you want to try this or X, Y, and Z?" I'm like, I don't know if they can say yes, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. And so that makes it so much easier to be like, I'm about to ask you to do this crazy thing, but trust me, it's gonna be really good. And I'll show it to you. Before we go, you
Yes.
can let me know how you're feeling. But I think that's the big thing too. Once they know you're not just gonna put them out there for them to look dumb or put them in a bad light, and that's never your intention, then I think they're kind of like, okay, well, maybe I'll try this. I'll step out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, like the ideas that come up from that stuff too, right? Like once they're comfortable and open to, you kind of being around, it's the ideas, the possibilities are endless. And it's also like you want to create an environment where like they are comfortable enough to say no too, right?
Exactly.
Like there's so many opportunities where it's like, hey, I have this really cool idea. You would be perfect for it. They still have to feel okay and trust you enough to be like, it's not for me. Like maybe something else, but it's not for me.
Yeah, and that's totally okay. A lot of people take offense to that sometimes, and I'm like, it's a good thing that he said no. He's gonna say, no, I didn't do this, but maybe, that they come and ask me something the next time. I told him no that time. We can kind of work through there, but I think that's a good thing. And I think we've seen a lot of this, like, with the mini mic videos and then the locker room, people asking questions and players going around asking questions. They've opened up so much more because they're on TikTok themselves too. So they're seeing all this content like, wait, I want to be a part of this, or let me take the mic and go and do this. So I think you see a lot of them be like, okay, like I could be a little content creator myself.
That's true. It's true. Well, so like talking about comfort and kind of, building that, one of the things that is always kind of the most exciting, but also kind of terrifying is like, just like you said, no 2 days are alike. And there's really like there's no right or wrong way to do social, you know, like it's so much of like, yes, you're throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, but you're also kind of going with what you understand and what you've learned and the lessons that you've learned. So like from your perspective, kind of like how do you get everyone on your team in like in that right content creating space? Not necessarily like nervous about being right or wrong, but just being like true to what you're doing.
I think it's honestly just having open conversations and trying to plan ahead. That's something that we've was probably our biggest thing like we needed to work on, and I think we're taking steps. We're not fully there yet because like I said, something happens every day and you're like, well, we were planning for this, but we haven't gotten there yet, you know? But I think it's kind of just creating that space to be like, okay, we have this coming up, like could happen. And a lot of times I'm like, I mean, I understand that, but like if you want to make it, like let's take a look and see how we can go from there of just being open to doing that. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then truly just being around like a lot of content, whether things are going well or not, but like being in that locker room, being out at practice, hearing things and like sparks an idea of like, hey, we may not be doing well, but they're talking about this, like this might be a really good idea. Let's work on this content. And so it's relaying that information of like, what have you been hearing? What have we been hearing? What are we seeing? Has been something that I've thought, but like we've mostly kind of gathered together, brainstorm, hey, we're looking at X, Y, and Z, or we need to be working on more TikToks this week. What can we do? And then just scrubbing through the video and having people just watch it, like, do you think that's funny? Well, how could we kind of pair this? So it's not like an exact answer, but that's kind of how we've been doing it.
When and you bring up a good point. Like the way I always describe it is like socials in the middle of the spider web. So there's always like there's requests, there's ideas, there's things that are always coming in to social, and like then it's our job to kind of figure out, okay, well, how do we make this work? But at the same time, I don't think enough gets done from like the reverse side where like if you're in the middle of the spider web, yes, you're getting the most kind of requests and ideas, but at the same time, like if you're in the middle, you can also use the other, you know, tentacles, I guess, or what I don't even know what you'd call the spider web, the webs, I guess, but like using like the outer parts of the web of like, you know, your business development team, your partnerships, your PR team, you know, all of like the community team and using them in a way that helps with content as well. Like you said, like you're listening, but then it's also like, okay, I have an idea for player X to do this thing. Well, maybe community is already planning an event that would lend itself to this kind of story. And so I think that that's one thing that we've been working on in kind of each of my stops. But like it's one of those things where it's like I don't think enough gets done the reverse, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on something I was going to bring up too of like we get so much requests, right? You have sponsorship, you have community. Everyone wants a piece of the pie of social, and I think that's also what's really hard of like how do you balance that, right? How are you can't just be throwing out content just because this department wants it or this is supposed to go out. No, there's certain things that you just got to be like, "Yep, I had to do this. It is what it is." But I think that's probably the hardest part of servicing every department in a way where you're not sometimes you have to be the no person. Sometimes you have to do that. And I think kind of figuring out that balance, being really good content, but then figuring out how to make it still good content, right? Like you still have to figure out how to make it good content for those departments. And that's a hard one to kind of figure out.
All right, so moving back into like I said 100 times, and I think I've probably said it on this podcast with every guest I've talked to from the NFL, but like using the Panthers as inspiration, like the ideas and you know the executions that you guys put together, like can you walk me through one of kind of one that you're really proud of and you were, you know, how you kind of guys came up with the idea, how you know, put it into action, all the planning that went to, because I think that's something that gets lost in this industry is like it's not just here's an idea, it's done, let's post it. It's,
Yeah,
you
like
know,
boom, boom, boom.
yes. So it's like here's the idea, here's the 9,000 things that took place, and now it's time to post it. So just maybe take me through whatever that project might be and go from there.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with this. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a poster from our 90 schedule release, which is one of my favorite projects that we've done so far. So schedule release one is a beast in its own. And I just want to let people know, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. We, all the teams get the schedule the night before the schedule is supposed to be posted the next day. Mind you, you could go and film a video or whatever you're doing for your project, which is mostly a video, but You have to shoot the video. Your videographers, agencies, whatever you're using, have to shoot the video in a way that they can edit it and mix it around for the dates to make sense. So that's something I tell people, and they're like mind blown because they're like, "You, what do you mean? You don't know months before?" No. So, we had a brainstorming session, and I don't. There was a lot of ideas kind of being thrown around, and we got stuck into how can we bring nostalgia. Like the '90s were like that time. And what's funny is, so myself, Chanel, our photographer, Megan, our social coordinator, we had just went to this '90s party, and we were like, "Why don't we do like a '90s themed party?" And everyone was kind of on board, so we're like, "Let's do it." So we ended up, Chanel and Meg kind of took the reins on some of the logistical parts of like renting out a house here in Charlotte, and we had to furnish it. So we were at Walmart, we were at all these different stores. There's a whole bunch of thrift stores that were out here buying stuff to like create a room, a whole house, so we can do the video shoot there. We got stuff on Facebook Marketplace. I was like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Buy couches, all this stuff. But that was one of my favorite projects we did. So they got the house. We filmed the shoot within 2 days, I want to say. 2, 3 days maybe. And then as we were going along at the time, we were kind of talking about it, and I was like, I don't think I've seen a team really roll out content other than the day of, and then maybe like a meme earlier in the week saying like our schedule's coming out. So like, how can we really make this a campaign? How can we start on Monday? Because from the past couple of years, it's been a Thursday release. So like, how can we drop content from Monday to Thursday, like day to day? I was like, it's gonna be a lot, but like, what can we do? So we started thinking on '90s, and then we started thinking, how can we recreate either '90s magazines or just magazines in general where the guys are in like throwback vintage outfits? And so we started going through different magazines and said, this is what we need to do, right? And so this is kind of where, earlier we talked about building the relationships, but I text maybe 10 players and back to back to back, like, yep, I'll do it. Yep, I'll do it. Sent them some inspo, right? And everybody was on board. So then I'm like, hey, well, send me your sizes. So Meg, Chanel, and we go into thrift stores, buying all the outfits for them to wear. And so this photo shoot was awesome. Like, we set up right outside our office. There's a ramp because we were in the stadium. There's a ramp out there, and Chanel got all these different colored backgrounds, and it was just like the paper backdrops. We got the players to come in. They were working out. We like golf carted them up, took the photos there at the stadium, and then edited them there. And Chanel's the one who created the graphics for them to be magazines. So each guy had their own day as we were dropping. I think we almost had to do 2 each. So that content you saw coming out Monday, and there was really no context to it. It was kind of just like a throwback. I think we called it the rewind. And so people were like, this is cool, but I don't, what is it? And so as we kept going, I think people started realizing, okay, this content's coming out. It's 90s themed. So we were rolling that out, and then we were working, who our director at the time, Bill and Chanel, were working through music rights because, everyone will be like, why is this video muted? Or why can't you hear this? Because copyright reasons, And so we got This Is How You Do It by Montel Jordan. And that really, I think, also like set the tone for the video as well. But that entire, video shoot and just rollout was probably one of my favorite things we've done, just because at the time you hadn't really seen, and I could be wrong on this, but you hadn't really seen as many players involved with a lot of schedule releases. And just because it's hard to get that many guys to come in and to do that. And so we got almost 8 to 10 guys to be a part of the rollout. And then there was like little nuggets in the video where you see them here and there. But I think that was something I was most proud of because, again, you hadn't seen teams drop content that was specifically like aligned with the video that early on.
That's amazing. I definitely don't think everyone understands like everything that goes into, especially like schedule release in the NFL, is now like this insane thing that there's so much pressure on every social team to be like, okay, what's the next idea or what's the next video that everyone's going to be talking about until next year? And it's like just that pressure is so, oh man.
There's so much pressure. And like I said that as probably quickly as possible, but like our videographers, once we get the schedule, that next day they have to go and do all the post-production, and all of that is like animated graphics, and it's insane. Our designer made some etch-a-sketch that then we used for the actual schedule. So there's so many people that are a part of it, and there's so many moving parts. That's like what makes it hard. And I'm like, at one point we're gonna go back to just doing a graphic, I'm sure. Like people are probably gonna be like, okay, I'm fed up.
When it's getting to that point too, like just like you said, like you could have the most incredible, amazing idea that's ever happened, but if
Yeah.
you can't chop it up into pieces and move it around at the last minute, it doesn't work. And it's like it's that little like idiosyncrasy that it's like you don't see from the outside or don't understand that it's like, no, these teams haven't been working on these videos for like 6 months, like maybe the idea and kind of the process, but it's like it's literally the day before where it's like, some poor guy or girl for 10 hours is putting this thing together.
They're like, I hate this by the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people say all the time that schedule is like the social team Super Bowl, and it really is. You get there and you're like, okay, what's gonna happen? And then posting it, I know every social person gets so stressed because it's like you see the thing loading, on Studio and Twitter, it's fine, but everything is like, please just go well.
Yes, like, oh man. No,
But
no whammies, please.
exactly. Being able to do that was actually really cool. And then this past year, the guys had seen all the stuff we did and we were like, what are you guys doing this year? And so we were able to get them all actually in the video this year. And that was another thing. I text or messaged maybe like 15 of them and had them all scheduled. And so 2 days in, they came in, they were part of our production. And so they didn't even ask what they had to do. They're just like, I don't know, I'll just show up. It's fine. And so I think that says a lot to the team that we've been able to build and the relationships that we've been able to create with them.
Yeah. And it goes back, just like you said, the trust. Like if the players on your team love what you're doing content wise, your content's only going to get better and better because then they're down. Like they want to be a part of it. Like you said, like you text 15 of them the next year and they're like, we're in, like, let's go.
We had legends too. I think one more thing I kind of want to bring up about that 90s one is Thomas Davis. He came out and he was a an ice cream man in the video. And so we worked with our community team and our sponsorship team to go out into the community and get a real ice cream truck. And he went out and gave ice cream, gave out t-shirts because we had t-shirts made. So the poster up there was on an actual t-shirt. We called it the Keep Pounding Tour. So it looked like it was a concert. And so we were able to like take that from just a video on social out into the community and giving it to fans and having people interact and be a part of it, not just consuming it. So I think that was awesome to have.
That's so cool. Well, hey, so changing gears really quickly, I want to get into kind of like as a hiring manager, like I think everything that we've been talking about is amazing and so helpful, but like more specifically for that, that college kid who now has had probably more training than we did in college, but like now that they're getting to that point where it's like, whether they're graduating soon, whether they're just starting college and they know that this is the path, like what would be that one piece of advice of like you wish you knew this when you were back in school or, as you were about to enter the workforce?
I think being one is hard to pick one, but I think being as open to learning and getting feedback as possible. Like I've seen a lot lately. It's like, oh, well, I didn't really want to do that, or I didn't envision myself doing this. And especially like in an intern role, it's like, hey, you're about to get all this experience, right? And so there may be one thing you don't like doing, but this thing will help you kind of move forward. So it can be like the smallest things. I always tell people I would never ask you to do something that I've never done or that I wouldn't do now. I just may not be able to have the capacity for it. So I think just being open and willing to learn and to take on any task that's kind of given to you is the biggest thing that I think really help people. And I think it opens, your hiring manager or the people who are in that position, their eyes of like, hey, this person's going to get the job done and be open to helping when and wherever we need it. Because especially in sports, there's some random stuff that happens. I'm like, hey, can you help me with this? I know you haven't done it, but I will walk you through it. I just need your help.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Like just not being afraid to take on something that you don't know. Like there's literally like I've been doing it for over 10 years. Like I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to do everything, but like I will give you my best. And if I don't know, I'll either find out or I'll find somebody who knows how and I'll learn from them. But like that's such a, it's such a scary thing to be okay with not knowing everything, but still being open to like, yeah, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, and I think networking too, like with your other interns or people just in your department, I tell people all the time, and networking obviously is probably the one of the most popular ones, but leaning on different departments, going into the video office and sitting in the video office, going into PR and be like, hey, what is your day-to-day like? Or I know that we just launched, so you could say for us, like, hey, we just hired a GM, but like, how did you play a part in that? What did that look like for you guys? And so then you can see like, hey, do I like this route better than what I'm doing over here? Or you can say like, I know that's not for me. And I think that's the biggest key when doing internships and getting out right out of school is learning what's not for you. You're going to
Yes.
learn what you like, but the biggest thing is learning what's not for you because then you can kind of maneuver to that next step and help you through that journey.
Yeah. No, and I think I've talked about this before, but like it's exactly like you said. Like an internship is it's always going to kind of take you closer to what you want to do. And whether that's like I did something that I really like and I want to do more of that, or it's like this internship was horrible. I don't want to do this ever again. But at least like it's helping you kind of in your process.
Yeah, I had two polar opposite internships when I was in college. I had one, it was for the city of Gilbert. And then I can't even tell you what I was working on. It was like dog days of summer and where you can go into the park doing social, right? Then I worked for Power 98.3 that was out there, and I was out at concerts, events, outside of clubs, like promoting whatever concert was coming out and helping with the morning show. Those are like two completely different things. And like, obviously, for me, my personality is way more the radio side, but like I learned so much from the city and what I didn't really want to do. And that's no knock on that because that was a great opportunity. But I was like, okay, maybe I don't really want to do that side.
It's so funny. Like my first internship was I think my June yeah, the summer of my junior year of college, and it was a marketing intern for like the local insurance company.
Yeah.
And so I like was making graphics and working on these like campaigns and but basically like they had a project for me to do for the whole like the 3 months or whatever I was working there, and I was done with it in like a week and a half. So then it was like now what? And it was just, but then it was like you're walking around, you're learning from people. It was a great experience that like it helped me understand some things, but at the same time was like, I I can't work in insurance. I can't like I have to like the topic of conversation has to be something that I care about, not just like running social or marketing for just anything that happens.
Yeah, I mean the radio internship I started as more of like promotions, and then a week and a half into it, I was kind of just like roaming around like, what are you guys working on? What are you guys working on? What are you guys working on? The next week I was on the morning show at the radio station by like 5 in the morning, helping screen calls and coming up with ideas to talk about on the morning show. Like
Well,
whirlwind or a whiplash of roles, but like that was really cool and I got to learn so much from that. So I truly think like what you get out of these internships is 100% whatever you put in. You can get nothing, and if you're just kind of there to be there, hey, sometimes we all have to do it, but I think if you really want something out of it, it's kind of figuring out like what do I want, what can I get, and how can I get there.
yeah, that it's a great point. Like no one is ever going to walk up and hand you something that you want, like you always have to be willing to like you're going after something. You are working towards something. Like don't ever sit back and just think like, well, I finally got this job, so I'm just going to chill and wait till someone tells me they need me and then I'll do everything, even if it's great work. Like you have to want it more than, you're expecting someone to give it to you.
Yeah, you have to want it, and people are watching all the time. Like it may not be as obvious, but like you can do one thing, like, wow, like that person really went out of their way to get this done or to like go the extra mile. And I'm not saying you have to do that in every role or every situation, but I think certain things really, really kind of make you stand out. And the sports industry is very small. People think it's huge. There's so many teams, it's fine. I mean, we've been talking since forever, whether that was Arizona, Steelers, like it's been a long time. And so word travels. And I think the biggest thing to get out of that is you don't want to burn bridges, but also you could really make great connections and they can really help you in that next step. Or, hey, I'm applying for this. Do you know somebody from there? Like, actually, I really do. You should connect with them. And so I think that's kind of a key lesson to learn.
Yeah. Well, and that's Q, when I talked to him, he brought up like a quote. He said like no, you never know when people or when your name's being talked about behind closed doors, and like that's a big thing. Where another story from when I was with the Steelers is our GM at the time, Kevin Colbert, like his thing was like his quote was like the more you can do. And so whenever it was like, we're out at training camp and it's going to rain and we need to pull tarps, he was always one of the people who was down there ready to pull the tarp. So it was like that was a point of pride for me and for like our team was like when it rains, we need to beat Kevin Colbert down to the field and be ready to help, because then it's like even if he had no idea who we were at the time, he knew that we were willing to help and we were willing to do, like, obviously we're not the ground crew, like that's not part of our job, but like we're all in it together, and like the more that we could do to show that and help the team in any by any means necessary, like that's what we were going to do.
Yeah, and I think like as a social team, you become part of the team, right? Like you are around at practice, you're on the flight, you're in the lunchroom, you're in the elevator, everywhere. And so I always tell people when they first get in here, like you may feel like it's awkward, but it would help you to say hi and start conversation with everyone in this building, whether you know them or not. It is just good to say good morning, how are you doing? Because one, that's a thing to do, but at the same time, it's like you are around everyone and like you should show the same respect to whoever you're talking to, like you said, the GM or to whoever. So I think that's like a huge thing too. And I think it's more of a thing as you grow older, but it's like it's the little things that really mean a lot.
It's true. I mean, you're all your coworkers. Like, yes,
Yeah.
some of your coworkers make slightly more money than we
Yeah.
do, but like at the end of the day, that's it, right? Like you're going to the same building every day to work, like you're taking the same trips, like you're doing all of the same things. So yeah, I mean, it all goes back to that building that comfort level and building that respect and understanding with the players and with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna end this with a couple quick hitter questions. Answer them as quickly or as slowly as you want, and then we'll kind of wrap it up from there.
You got it.
All right. So, what would be your least favorite industry buzzword?
Uh, Viral.
Yeah,
How can we go viral? It's like,
good luck.
tell
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
You know things like this will really do well, but then you have stuff that it's like, I did not realize that was gonna go that way. So I think viral, and then let's circle back.
Ooh, circle back. That's a good one. I've viral's been at least a couple people's at this point, but
Because people think it's so easy.
well, it's like if you look at, like I think I did this I forgot when I was leaving the NFL, but I looked at like probably the top 10 posts that I ever put out on Twitter specifically. And it was like, I swear all 10 of them were reactionary. They were text only. They had nothing to do with like all this crazy planning. It was just like viral things are just like, it's so like, there's no way to predict them. They just happen.
I had a video a couple years ago, post game. It was a post win, and it was Derek Brown helping Dante Jackson get out of his pads. We see that every single day. We see that at practice. We see that at pregame, postgame, whatever, right? So I didn't think anything of it, but he takes it out, and Dante's like, "It's a boy." We post it like 3, 4, 5 million views, and it's like, oh, I thought it was funny, but I'm like, this is stuff we see every day, but you see it in a different aspect. He adds something funny to it, and it's like, okay, well, so you really never know, but right place, right time.
It's funny bringing that up. Our social manager with the Cardinals when I first started, Jesse, our best TikTok that we ever put out.
Oh my gosh.
It it
His
was
mic,
yeah.
amazing. Please tell them what it was.
Yeah, so it was this clip, like so we did like a mic'd up video every game. If we won, they were obviously better. If we lost, they weren't so great. But this video was we mic'd up DJ Humphries, our left tackle, and Jesse was basically standing next to him, and everyone had been following him around kind of pregame and videoing everything that he was doing. And he kind of comes up to Jesse and he's like, "Why are you guys following me?" And he's like, "You're mic'd up, aren't you?" And he's like, "Oh, I forgot." And like it never in a million years did I think it probably had like 8 or 9 million views. And it was
Yeah.
like just something that was part of a bigger piece that was like, oh, this is kind of funny. And you never know. You never know.
You never know, but it's so important to be like, let me just try this little clip. Let's just try it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I remember sending it to Jesse, and I was like, this is hilarious.
that's so funny. Okay, Parks and Rec or The Office?
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get flamed for this. I've never seen either.
Oh, you're not alone in
I
this.
swear. Okay, okay, good, good.
You're
Because I
not
always
alone.
feel bad. The Office, I feel like, is more like probably a lot of people are fairly excited. I tell people in our office all the time, I'm like, I haven't seen it. But Parks and Recs, I feel like people would probably be upset.
Parks and Rec is one of my favorite shows of all time. The Office, I think I've seen 3 episodes, but I know all of the memes, all of the gifs.
It's
Like I know,
happening.
yes, like I know all of those, but I don't know what they're from or what the context is.
Yeah, I'm like, hey guys, does this work? Is this what you're looking for? What is this from? Just so I know the context. I'm not posting this out of,
Yeah.
something crazy.
Oh man. Friends or Seinfeld?
Friends.
Like it.
Yeah.
Ranch or blue cheese?
Oh, ranch. No doubt.
Same, same. Uh, Cool Ranch or nacho cheese?
Cool ranch.
Nice. TikTok, Reels, or Shorts?
Ah, okay. TikTok, but Reels has a special place in my heart because we launched Reels. I mean, we launched TikTok too, but we launched Reels first, like kind of big projects. And so that was something that we started off really, really well. And so that's something that will always have a place in my heart. But now I feel like stuff from TikTok hits Reels weeks after. So
Yeah.
TikTok's where it's at. And I've been learning so much. So
Yeah. Uh, Vine or MySpace?
MySpace.
That's a
Just
good
because
one.
I just remember coding my own page, my top eight. Yeah, it was a good time.
Uh-huh. I remember like you could update like the music when you first went to your profile. You could update like the whole like backdrop and everything. Oh, it's so funny.
Yep. Yep. You had your top eight. You had a whole playlist, the background. It was time for all the little sparkly backgrounds, man.
Yep. What a time to be alive. All right, last one.
Yeah.
Rate the finale of Game of Thrones from 1 to 10.
So I also haven't seen.
I always like I basically start with the Parks and Rec in the office and end with
Okay.
that one. And it's like there's been at least probably three people who have like never seen it, never seen
Okay. So I'm
it.
not alone.
You're not alone. You're not
Okay.
alone. So don't feel
Well, what
bad.
did you rate it?
I said like probably a 6 or a 7. I can't remember what my answer was. Everyone hated it, but like the answer I always give is like I watched the first like 4 seasons. I kind of binged them because I caught on late. But then when I was watching like the show with everybody like every Sunday, it was like I think I was more caught up of how awesome that experience was. So like when it ended, it was just kind of like, yeah, that's fine. Like that's not how I would ended it, but like this was a fun ride. Like
It
I'm
is what it is.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So, but I'd say I'd give it a 6. I would say a 6. I think that's fair.
Good to know. Good to know.
Well, cool. Well, honestly, I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
Ooh,
It was a blast. Anytime that we can ever connect is always a good time. And I always learn so much from every one of these episodes, but like being able to talk to you who it's like you're part of this team that like has always been like so influential and has honestly like from afar has played a big part in my career is like just watching and following along and learning from you, learning from Amy, learning from Astasia, like learning from your team has been amazing. And now you got Dan Nettles down there who came from the Cardinals too.
yeah.
But
Yep.
like it's just always been like I don't know that I think we've played in Carolina a few times, like obviously with the Steelers, we played preseason all the time, but like I've never seen your guys' office. Like it's never been like I've never been
Chaotic
there,
right now.
but like I feel like it's always been kind of like my social home almost where it's like I just like feel so comfortable with everybody there. So I again like long-winded, but I can't thank you enough and really appreciate you kind of giving this knowledge to everybody who's willing to listen.
Of course. And I thank you for having me on here. I know, like, even a friendship, I don't know. We've met obviously in Arizona, didn't get to spend a ton of time there, but I've always bounced ideas back and forth or been like, hey, how do you think about this situation? So I really appreciate you.
Definitely. Well, yeah, and thank you for watching. This has been another episode of a very good social media podcast. We try and live up to that name every day, and we'll see you next time.